And let me turn on my camera so you guys can put a face to a name. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is John Meredith, and I will be your instructor for this Metric Mastery certification course. I am talking to you from my home in Bedford, New Hampshire in the United States. So I'm on the US East Coast, a little bit from about an hour to an hour and a half north of Boston, depending on where you are in Boston. So that's where I'm located. And this is my office that you see behind me. So my home office, like I said, my kids are grown and gone and have their own houses. And so I converted one of their bedrooms into an office. Anyway, the only thing I ask is that you all, if you have questions and stuff, please feel free to ask. One thing I have learned through the years of teaching, and I started teaching way back in 1982 as a US Navy instructor. So one thing I've learned through the years is that when somebody has a question and they ask their question, that gets somebody to think about their question. And before you know it, we've covered the material in a very real and interactive way, rather than me trying to do some sort of a bad monologue. So I would encourage you to ask your questions. Anything we can do to help you, feel free to let us know. We do have a lot of material to cover, so I'm going to get right to it. But anything we can help you with, feel free to let me know. I am going to stop the streaming video just to save some bandwidth here, and let's go ahead and get started. So, game plan here. We're going to talk about a little bit of introduction to the course. We're going to talk about the basics of metrics, what a metric is, and that sort of thing. Talk about collecting metrics, analyzing metrics. We're going to have a lab on that. We're actually going to install a collector if you want to on your computer, so that we can get metrics from your computer if you want to. If you don't want to, that's fine. If you don't have privileges to install software on your computer, that's fine. You don't have to. Bottom line is that we're going to go install some software here, analyze some metrics and see what's going on. We're going to talk about monitoring some metrics, and then we'll basically, do some labs and stuff with regards to monitoring various metrics and playing around with metrics and metric editor and all that good stuff. And while this lecture lab part is about 2 hours, I will try to take a break here, a 5-minute break between the first 2 hours. And then the last hour is an opportunity for you to take the certification exam. I don't know if you've taken any of our certification exams before, but of all of our certification exams, in my opinion, this is the hardest. And what makes it the hardest is a lot of the questions are based on the documentation. So you really need to go into the documentation to get some of the answers, okay? Now, that being said, as we get around to doing the exam in a little over 2 hours, we get around to doing the exam, if you get stuck on a question, I'm going to be here. So ask your question, ask and see what you're getting stumped on, and I will gladly try to help you. Our goal is to help you to achieve certification, not to become a hindrance. So let me know what we can do to help and make that process easier. Speaking of the examination, we're running a special promotion right now. And that is, if you take the class and you take the certification and you pass the certification, we'll give you a $15 Uber Eats voucher. So there's a little form here. I'll put that link to the form in the chat box. Okay. And then you can fill out that form if you want to, and we'll send you an Uber Eats voucher. Please remember that it'll take us a little bit of time to process this, okay? So it may take up to 48 traditional hours, may take up to 2 days for you to receive the Uber Eats voucher that you'll get in the email. So just give us a little bit of time. Any questions so far? All right, let's talk about metrics. What is a metric, right? Well, a metric is a set of data points that typically measure the value of something over time, right? So one of my favorites is, when you have kids and stuff like that, you measure height your child every 6 months. It's a good metric. How are they growing? That sort of thing. One of my not so personal favorite ones is measuring your weight every week, but certainly you can do that. I just get disappointed when I do that. So measuring the temperature if you need to, if you're sick, under the weather, that sort of thing. So these are typical metrics that, we all typically do. Now, how do we care about metrics? Why do we care about metrics? Well, metrics can become our key performance indicators, KPIs. So if you haven't learned that term, here it is, key performance indicator or KPI, that allow us to look, some of your metrics are, gee, how profitable is your company? Gee, are you responding to software license or service license agreements and service level agreements. You're responding to people's issues in a timely manner, those SLAs, right? Another lovely TLA. So the point is that we want to be able to see how we are doing. And that can become a performance factor for us to see if we are achieving the desired performance. Additionally, if you're talking about you're in a manufacturing environment and you've got various equipments running at certain RPMs, is it running too high, too low? Do you have manufacturing defects? How many? So metrics can be used in a lot of places to see exactly what's going on. Metrics tend to be numeric. Now, another aspect of our product is logs. Logs tend to have information about what's going on. So, and if you've heard our fundamentals class, you know that we advocate that metrics tell us what is going on. Logs will tell us why it is going on. But there is a test question with regards to the difference between logs and metrics. Remember, metrics are numeric. Typically, we measure them over time, measure a value over time, whereas logs tend to be more informational type things, okay? So again, leading into this slide, metric versus logs, right? The record of events that has occurred. By the way, the test that you're going to take, if you take it, the certification exam, is open book, open notes, open slides. And in a little bit, I'll show you where you can access and get the copy of the slides, as well as a recording of this class if you want it. So if I were to look at whether it's a log or a metric, if I look at wind patterns over the last 24 hours, wind patterns, because it comes south, southeast, north, northeast, whatever, at so many knots, that's not necessarily a metric. That's probably more of a log. However, if I'm looking at wind speeds over the last 24 hours, that would be certainly a metric. Every time the wind exceeded 20 knots, typically that's going to be log information, unless we do a count on that. Then we would have a metric. CPU uptime for the last 15 minutes, or my CPU percentage, again, that would be a perfectly good metric. Failed logins, or my count of failed logins, would be a nice metric. The fact that somebody failed to log in, who that user was, that would be a log entry. And then the number of server errors on an hourly basis, that's a terrific metric. We see that stuff very, very, throughout our product. So with regards to Sumo Logic, if you're not familiar with Sumo Logic, there are 3 phases to using Sumo Logic. There's the data collection phase. We have to get data into Sumo Logic from various systems. Maybe you're on the cloud and you want to grab, maybe you're on AWS, you want to grab your CloudTrail log data, security logs, metrics from your S3 buckets, logs from your S3 buckets, things like that. We have what we call collectors and sources. Collectors is something where it's the highway under which the data flows. The collectors are used to compress, encrypt, and send. That's what a collector does. Within those collectors, we have specific sources. Those sources are the sources of logs that you want to grab. So, for example, I want to grab my web server logs, that's a source. If I want to grab my authentication logs, that's a source. If I want to grab my CloudTrail logs or my S3 bucket logs or anything like that, those are sources. Additionally, one of the sources we can grab is metrics off of a system, and you can select what metrics that you want, as you'll see in just a few minutes. So once we get that data into Sumo Logic, we can start querying and analyzing. Now we've got 2 types of querying that we do, a log querying and metric querying. For the purposes of this class, we're going to be focused on the metric querying, focused strictly on metrics, not so much logs. Now, if you want to learn about blog querying, there's a search mastery class that you may want to sign up for or check out to see basically what's going on. And I'll show you where information like that can be found. Once I run my queries and aggregate my metrics or whatever, I can create visualizations, bar charts, line charts, column charts, even map charts if I want to see where the stuff is occurring. I can then take those visualizations or that raw data, and I can start creating dashboards, and I can start creating alerts. So in this class, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go through all 3 of these phases with regards to metrics. We're going to see how this stuff all works. Okay. Any questions so far? Let me make sure everybody's microphones are enabled. I'm sure I've had a couple folks join. Indeed, I have. So welcome, everyone. Glad to have you with us. We just enable more microphones here. Again, if you want to ask a question or something, feel free just to go ahead and enable your microphone and ask your question. Okay. Unmute your mic and ask your question. Or you can put it in the chat box, whichever is easiest for you. As far as collecting our metrics, we've got two types of collectors. A hosted collector. If you're on the cloud, AWS, Azure, if you're using cloud-based software like Office 365, if you're using, One Login, things like that, Salesforce, you would use a hosted collector. Those hosted collectors do not require you to do anything in Sumo Logic. You don't have to install anything. You can just select your hosted collector and off to the races we go. We maintain those collectors. You don't have to worry about that. If you want to deal with on-prem equipment, some servers that you have, or maybe your computers, there you will install a collector. Our current collectors are lightweight Java-based applications, and they will typically take no more than 1% of your CPU, 1% of your memory. They won't take much at all, okay? Now, you can install a collector on each machine that you want to grab metrics and logs off of, or you can create a consolidated installed collector and install that collector here, and then have these machines forward their logs and metrics to this machine. And again, what the collector does is it's going to compress, encrypt, and send it to the Sumo Logic cloud so that we can then see it, so you can see it as you log into your environment. Okay. Again, a little bit more involved here, nothing really catastrophic. These over here on the right are my hosted collectors. As you can see, whether you're on AWS, Azure, Google Cloud Platform, if you're using software as a service products, again, you can use these hosted collectors for that. Over here is, again, our installed collectors. And again, we're showing you that you can install a collector on each machine if you want, or set up a consolidated installed collector. And that consolidated installed collector is really handy when these machines don't have access to the internet. They can simply forward their logs to this machine. It will encrypt, compress, and send that data through your firewall into the Sumo Logic cloud.
Do you guys accept CrowdStrike data?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Hey, we've got a big partnership with CrowdStrike.
Great. I just didn't see him on the slide. I was just curious.
Yep. No, there's a lot. We could have a very busy slide, so I appreciate the question. But yeah, we work with CrowdStrike as well. Yeah. Got a big partnership there. Now, a couple of ground rules here, and this makes a great test question. In fact, I'm pretty sure you'll see this one. Sumo does not ingest metric data that is more than 1 week old. So if on the timestamp of the metric data, it's more than 1 week old, we're going to reject it. We're just not going to ingest it. We're going to bypass it.
Hey, I'm sorry, just 1 second, just to go back to the previous slide.
Sure.
And maybe you could help me understand if there's going to be any future partnerships or integrations with Signal Sciences, because I see Fastly as a CDN integration. But in our environment we have Fastly, but Fastly also bought a WAF company called Signal Sciences. And we're actually going through one of your partners right now, and we're just trying to find a creative way to actually use the WAF logs properly, but it doesn't seem like there's a huge integration. I don't know if there's anything you could speak to now or maybe later in the presentation as far as integration with or partnerships with Fastly regarding their Signal Sciences WAF.
I don't know. I'm not heard of that one yet, but quite frankly, there's a lot of different sources that we ingest that I may not be familiar with, but I'll show you where we can find that information out, and hopefully that will help.
Cool.
So,
thanks.
Yep. Good question. Any other questions about it before I leave this slide? So, all right. By the way, if you really want to know more about, for example, when would I use a consolidated installed collector versus breaking it out, stuff like that, I recommend you consider taking our administration class, because our administration class really focuses on, when we switch and when we can do things and all that fun stuff. We get into more detail of installing the collector. We will install a collector here. We will do that if you want to, but we get more detail in the administration class. Now, on to this slide. As I said, we do not ingest data that's more than 1 week old, 7 days. We will reject it. Now, when we inject, we receive the data. your metric data, we are going to create aggregation tables, roll-ups, if you will. And at 1 minute intervals, we will calculate the min, the max, the average, the sum, and the count for your data. And we'll roll those up at 1 minute intervals. We'll also roll them up at 1 hour intervals. And we'll keep the 1 hour resolution for 13 months. We'll keep the 1 minute resolution for 30 days. And we'll look at the raw data. The raw data will retain for 7 days. That is our normal metric retention policy. Okay. And so for test purposes, makes a great test question. And if you want to go back, say 6 months from now, obviously you can see what the data was for at 1 hour increments. If you want to go back 20 days from now, you can see what it was for 1 minute. If you want to go back the last 4 days, you can see the raw data. I don't know if you're bringing data in every minute, you're bringing data every 20 seconds, whatever, but you can see that raw data. Okay. So that's basically how that works. As far as analyzing metrics, we typically, when we work with metrics and stuff like that, you're going to find we use this concept of a key value pair format. So a field name and then its value, field name and its value. So here I'm saying I wanted to find the metric of wind speed as opposed to the metric of direct, or, the metric of velocity or something else. And then the region, what region am I in? Europe, EU. What country in Europe am I in? Spain. Now, if I write a query like this, this is going to give me the wind speed of all of the stations that we have in Spain. And if we have 255 stations, we will see all 255 stations and their data here if we want to. Now, if I want to add to that and only focus on the city of Valencia, where I only have 3 stations in the city of Valencia, then all of a sudden I start seeing just the 3 stations of Valencia. So when we create our metric queries, using these key value pairs helps us filter and see what we want to see. And then if we want to add the average for those 3 stations, we add an operator here, the average, and that's what only gives us a single value. So here I would have 3 values in this middle section, but when I put an average or a sum or a min or a max, it's going to aggregate it down to 1 value. And so you can do that. If I were to go up here to this first one and add the average pipe on here, then I would see only 1 value across my country of Spain. Show me the average wind speed across Spain. And you can specify how long of a period you want. You'll see that in just a little bit. When we get into the metric tool, you can control how much data that you want to see. Okay. All right. You'll see that we've got a whole bunch of metric operators. Now, I have a little link here that I can click on that will take us right to our documentation, take us right to our metric operators. And if you don't mind, I will throw this in the chat for everyone out there. Okay. So if you want a handy reference here for all the metric operators that we have, by the way, our log operators, that's a different link. That's a different thing. But here you can read through that. And if you want a PDF version, in the first paragraph here, as we get to the end of it, talks about there's a metric PDF cheat sheet that you can print this out and put it next to your computer. And again, it gives you an idea of all the metric operators that we can use and all that fun stuff. Okay. So hopefully that will help you out. Now,
I can't copy and paste in the chat. It says my chat is disabled, so I can't even post nor copy or paste.
okay.
I've got the same problem, John.
Okay, understand. A couple of you will. That's a setting in your company. Your company decides whether or not to allow you to do anything with the chat box. And so later on, when I post some other things in there, it's going to be a bit problematic. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a way to find this information. So for those of you who can't copy and paste in the chat box, if you go out to a Google Chrome or Firefox, whichever you want, and if you type in the URL help.sumologic.com, that's help.sumologic.com, that's going to take you to our documentation. This is our product documentation. Everything you wanted to know. Now, If I look here, I've got a bunch of chapters, right? These are different chapters. And so somebody asked earlier about installing collectors with regards to your software as a service stuff and everything else. Here under send data, I could look at my installed collectors or the different types of hosted collectors I have and see if that company and that product is represented, okay? For our purposes in this metric class, there's a whole chapter here on metrics. In fact, like I said, there's a lot of questions you're going to get asked on the certification exam that are based on some of this documentation. So I want you to be aware of it. Kevin, I see you've raised your hand. Go ahead and ask your question, sir. Let me make sure you're.
Hi, John. Can you hear me?
I hear you loud and clear, sir.
Okay, cool. Just checking. Just to the other people in the class who were having difficulty with the Zoom app. My colleague and I were having the same issue. We jumped out of the app and jumped in through the browser, and chat seems to be functioning through the browser. That might not be the same for your company's security process, but it does seem to work on this end. So I just figured I'd throw that out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. But again, for those of you who can't get to that link, if you go to help.sumologic.com, and then here in the search box, if you search for metric operator, it should take you to a list of different things. And the first one should be metric operators, and there you are. So you should be able to get here if you want to. And if you're looking for a great gift to give your fellow team members or whatever, you can print out this metric cheat sheet and, print it out and put it on their desk and give it to them as a special Sumo gift, whatever. And this is, like I said, our documentation. And again, you see that I'm in the metric chapter. Whenever you're in something in our documentation, the table of contents moves out here to the left. So here's my metric chapter, and then here's the sub chapters. And then here I am within that subchapter and all of that fun stuff. So that's where, again, you can see where you are and move around if you want, or just do searches and stuff to see what you need and all that. Okay. So hopefully that gets you there. Now, what I'd like you to do is I want you all to log into our training environment, okay? So if you would, fire up Google Chrome or Firefox, if you haven't already done so. Open up a new tab and go to service.sumologic.com. That's service.sumologic.com. And when you go to service.sumologic.com, it should give you a page that looks something like this. Bear with me. I'm going to put this information in the chat box. Maybe you can copy paste it. Maybe you can just type it, whatever you want. But if I fire up here and go to service.sumologic.com, and it probably will log me in. So let me log myself out. I'll show you how to log out a little bit later. So I'm looking to see what you're looking to see. Now, what you need to do, because we're going to set up collectors a little bit in this class, is you need to log in with an admin account, not an analyst account. If you've been in other classes, you probably logged in with training plus analyst with some 3-digit number at sumologic.com. Speaking of that 3-digit number, I'd like you all to pick a 3-digit number, okay? And I'd like you to type it in the chat box. So pick any 3-digit number you want. If my friend from the UK would like to be 007, now is your chance, 007. Again, I pick up here on my screen, you'll see I pick 603. The reason I pick 603 is that's the area code of New Hampshire. But you can pick any 3-digit number that you want, and I would ask that you type it in the chat box. I just want to make sure we don't have a lot of duplicates going on. So thank you, Demilola. And again, if I mispronounce your name, feel free to correct me. I want to make sure I get it right.
John, I took the opportunity to take 007, so thank you for that, but I can't put it in the chat. So
Okay,
just to
that's
say,
fine.
Greg has taken
Okay.
007.
Okay, fair enough.
John, I might jump out actually and just see if I can come back in and get the chat to work.
Oh, that's fine. Sure. Are you having problems trying to put things in the chat box? Because earlier I was able to have somebody put things in the chat box. So the Q&A box works just as well, guys. I appreciate that. But I want to make sure you guys can access the chat box, and you should be able to. Let me just make sure.
I am not able to type in chat also.
Okay, hang on a second.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You were saying getting out and then using the browser help the being able to get into the chat.
Okay, do me a favor. I just changed the settings here. You should be able to type in the chat box now. So I apologize. Normally, when we go in here, this is already configured for.
Yes, I
everybody
can.
access.
That
So it
worked.
looks like we've solved the chat problem. Okay, good. I apologize for that. That's interesting. I'll have to make a note and talk to the person who sets up our classes about that. So thank you. Apologize for that. Now we got chat box working, and so you can type in your numbers in there. Great, wonderful, whatever. And so what I want you to do is I want you to log in as training plus admin with that 3-digit number at sumologic.com. Now, what you're doing is you're logging into our training environment. You're not logging into your company's environment. You're logging into our training environment. Okay. So training plus admin, plus sign here, admin 3-digit number at sumologic.com. And then the password. The current password is capital SUMMER 22 exclamation mark. Summer of 22 exclamation mark. And that password changes every month. So if you want to know what the password is next month, I don't know what it is yet. I won't know until we change it. But if you ever want to know what the next password is or something like that, you want to play in our training environment, I am going to put my contact information in the chat box. You are welcome to send me an email, and I will gladly tell you what the new password is once we change it. Okay, I won't know until we change it. Okay. Now, to tell you the truth, and there's a reason why I'm going to do this, I'm going to log in with my credentials. Whoops, there we go. I'll log in with my credentials. I have a little bit more privileges here. So, sure, no problem. Appreciate it, Greg. Give me a second here. Yep. Greg and Paul both need microphones enabled. There you
Thanks,
go.
John. Yep, all good.
Good, very good. Yeah, thanks. And again, feel free to ask your questions, unmute your mic and stuff as we go through this. So you're now inside of Sumo Logic. Depending on what was left open, you might have a bunch of tabs here. The previous person that was in there, I'll show you how to close all those tabs in just a little bit. But right now, I want to make sure everybody gets logged in. So if you would, when you log in, again, service.sumologic.com, the user ID is training plus admin with 3-digit number at sumologic.com. The password is capital SUMMER 22 exclamation mark. And when you log in, I'd like you to raise your hand. So in the participants window, there should be an object for you to raise your hand. And that way I know people are in fact logged in and we are good to go. So right now I've got about 10 out of 19 who are logged in. I want to try not to leave anybody behind. So please stall for a minute or two. If you're having problems logging in, if there's issues and stuff, please feel free to let me know. I've got about 13, 14 of you have logged in. That's great. Again, some of you may be dealing with a work issue, so you can't log in right now. I understand. I'm not expecting perfect attendance here. But if you are having problems, let me know. All right. It looks like I got about 13. That's probably what I got. So let me lower all the hands, close that up. Whoops, okay, so I just joined in. Let me lower the hand again. Good. All right, so what I want to do is, yeah, I got you. It's like everybody's getting in. Good. All right. What I want to do here, folks, is I want to give you a little tour of Sumo Logic. So over here is my navigation panel. Now, your navigation panel may or may not be open. If it's closed like mine is right now, where it says Sumo Logic and gets a little hamburger menu. If you click anywhere up here, it'll open right up. And if you want to close it, click on the left turn signal here, and I'll close it. Now, this is our navigation panel. In here, I've got my shared library folder. I've got a personal folder, so when you save things, you can save them to your personal folder. And even if they're in your personal folder, you can still share them with others. Here's where I can mark things as a favorite if I want to, bookmark them, if you will. And then also I have recent. I can see recently opened by me or recently shared with me. So that's what these things are about. Now, down below is my main menu. So in here, I've got an app catalog. I'll talk about that in just a little bit. I got managed data. I got all kinds of neat stuff. Probably the most valuable thing for you all is the help. If I open up help and I click on documentation, that takes me to help.sumologic.com. Takes me to the product documentation. Okay. And then from there, I can log a ticket with support here if I need to. I can see about future requests, all kinds of nifty stuff here under help. Now, one other thing I want to show you while we're here. And I'm going to close this up. I don't care if you leave it open or close it, but I'm going to close it, save myself some screen space. Here on the Home tab, there is a subset of tabs underneath that. I want you to click on the one called Certification. And under Certification, you click on Get Certified. Now, when this opens up for me, I'm going to see more things than you will. You will see the recorded live training. You will see Get Support, and but you won't see all of these. And there's a reason why. We have turned off either training admins, training analyst accounts, the ability for them to take the certification exam. So they won't see the Get Certified, okay? And when we get around to doing the certification exam in about an hour and a half, I'll show you how to get there and what to do and all that fun stuff. But what we have here is, this is where our self-paced courses are. So here where it says Become a Sumo Logic Expert, you probably don't see it, just watch me. You can click here. Here's where our password is for our analyst account. For the admin account, we want to control those. So we want you to send an email to either me or training@sumologic.com. If you send it to training@sumologic.com, I'll still be responding, so no worries. In here is where our self-paced courses are. So here under General, if I want to, here's where I can see Log Query Basics, Fundamental Self-Paced class, Administration Self-Paced class, all of that good stuff. And you can go in and take any of these self-paced courses. Or if I go back out, go into Observability. And here in Observability, I see there's the Metric Mastery self-paced class. It's the same class as this, except it's self-paced. It says register for free. All of our courses are free, whether they're instructor-led, they're self-paced, doesn't make any difference. They're free. You click on this, boom, you are registered. And now you can go to town and go through these things. Yeah. Same basic material that we have in our instructor-led class. So our training is free. Now, if I go back here a little bit, and one more time, if I go back here, where it says learn a new skill. These are our quick start videos. So here are a bunch of our micro lessons. And these are quick little 5 to 10 minute videos that you can watch and learn about all kinds of things, from account management to adding a collector, to adding a source, to playing with metrics, all that fun stuff. There's an intro to metrics here that you can watch, 5 minutes. Help yourself, okay? So that's what that area is. Let me go back. On this recorded live training, and I do want you, I think you all can click on the recorded live training. I would like you to click on that if you can. And again, here's all of our instructor-led classes that we teach, that I teach. And so what I want you to do is, if you see Metric Mastery Cert Jam, I want you to click on that. And here you have a recording of the class. So here's where you can go back and play and all that fun stuff. And you can, this happens to be me who's recorded, but it could have been me or Odell or Josh or whatever, various classes that we teach. Additionally, here is the lab guide. So there's 2 ways you can get the lab guide. One, I'm going to post it up to the chat box. So I'm going to try to save you some time. I'm going to try to save you some grief. So I am uploading it to the chat box now. And hopefully, give me a second here while it's uploading. You're able to see it and you're able to download it. And if you're able to download it, that's great. That's all we need to do. The second thing is, if you can't get it there, you can get it here. So again, let me put this URL in the chat box. And here's where you can get a copy of the recording if you want, or watch the recording. You can also get a copy of our lab guide. This lab guide, ladies and gentlemen, looks like this. So when you open it up, it's a PDF document. It has all of our labs in it. And these are the labs that we're going to go through. Okay, pure and simple. And then also you get a copy of the slides. So you can go up here and you can download a copy of the slides. Remember, our exams are open note, open book, open slides, open documentation, all that fun stuff. You can even ask the instructor. So feel free to take advantage of that. Download those slides if you want. And that's true for all of our courses. So if I go back here to any of these courses, you can download, you can watch them, you can do the labs, all of that fun stuff. This is all free, okay? So additionally, by the way, if you've got 10 or more folks in your company and you either want us to do a virtual class for you, or you want us to do face-to-face classes, we'd love to do that. Love to come out and do a face-to-face class with you, help you out, enable you, get you started, that sort of thing. This Get Certified is where we're going to take and get certified. We'll talk about that later because you don't see that box right now. And so that's basically this training portal. Any questions about this training portal or where to get that information? All right. Well, hopefully you all have the lab guide. Paul, is there a question, sir?
Yeah, interestingly enough, when I go to the learn.sumologic.com, it automatically forwards me to a Q&A about the certifications and not that page.
Okay.
It's almost
It's
as
entered
if
to a
that page
frequently,
is-
okay. It's entered to a frequently asked questions page.
Yeah, I type in learn.sumologic.com and that's where it sends me.
Okay. Yeah, because you have to authenticate in. You have to come in through the Sumo Logic environment. You can't type in that URL. You have to be authenticated. If you're not authenticated, it sends you to that frequently asked page.
Understood. Sorry about that.
No, no problem. I can appreciate taking a shortcut. And again, to get there on the Sumo Logic environment, home tab, certification tab, get certified tab. Okay. All right. Let me get back to my slides here. Let's get back and let's start doing some things. Let's start playing around. Let's start having ourselves a good time here. Tell you what, let me do this. Let me not go back to the slides. Let's just go into the labs here real quick. Let's go into the labs. So again, I want to open up my lab guide. And in the lab guide, we are going to do lab number 1. We are going to install a collector. Okay. Now, again, if you don't have the rights to be able to install software on your computer, or if you don't want to do this, that's fine. I will tell you there's a lab 10 that cleans this stuff up and removes this stuff. So you don't have to, it'll remind you to clean this stuff off of your environment. Okay. But I'm going to go ahead and do lab number 1. Now in lab number 1, what we're going to do is we're going to go into our Sumo Logic environment. And we're going to go into the home tab here and we're going to open up our navigation panel, and then our navigation panel down in our main menu. We're going to click on manage data. We're going to click on collection. Now, this collection area is all of our collectors. And you and I are going to add a collector. So up here, and I'm not sure, let me go ahead and magnify this up so you can maybe see it a little easier. Up here, you'll see there's an option that says add collector. And if you click on add collector, it says, okay, you got 3 choices. 1, and this is fairly new. We are creating an open telemetry collector that you can use. And like I said, we'll talk more about it, I'm sure, in a future class. Probably have a class specifically for it, because it allows us using open telemetry to grab all the different data that you want, traces, metrics, logs, everything, okay? Over here is our installed collector. That's what we are going to choose. That's what we are going to use. And then there's also a hosted collector if you're on the cloud. Now, as I said, we want under installed collector, installed agent, installed collector. And when we do that, we see all the different collector types for the type of operating system we may be running. Linux, Windows, hopefully if you're running Windows, you're running a 64-bit machine by now. Mac, if you're on a Mac, and then binary package if you're on Unix. Yeah. So I happen to be on a Mac, so I'm going to go ahead and click Mac OS. Paul, is there a question, sir?
No, I'm sorry. I need to lower my hand.
Okay, girl, I can fix that. Okay, you already did. Okay.
How do
So
you
what
get to
I
the
want you to do-
page where the collectors are downloaded? I'm sorry.
That's all right. How we got there was, again, go back to the training environment. And in the training environment, open up your navigation panel. and go find where it says manage data in the main menu. Click on that and click on collection underneath that. And that will take you here to this page. Then you can click on the add collector in the upper right-hand corner.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Choose installed collector, and then choose the collector for your operating system. And that then should download this collector. Okay. Now, in my case, I'm on a Mac. You haven't already figured it out. And so I'm going to open up this file that I downloaded, and I'm going to go ahead and run. And it says it was from the internet. Are you sure you want to open it? Yeah, typical security stuff. Yes, thank you very much. I'm going to say open. And it's going to start my setup wizard. Now, one thing I want to warn you, first time I install this, it's going to puke. It's going to throw an error. Okay, I know it. I've had this happen to me before. The second time I install it, installs just fine. It's something with the existing collector I have on here and something with some Mac software that I have. Now, when I try to double click to install this, it says, hey, John, we need your Mac password or your Windows password or whatever to install software, right? Makes sense. So I am going to type in my password. So you can see we take passwords very seriously here at Sumo Logic. So there you go. And now it brings me to my setup wizard. Now my setup wizard, when I click next, it says, here's your license agreement. Of course, we want to accept the license agreement. And we go ahead and click next. And now it's going to install the software. It's going to find if it has a previous version. I have a previous version, so it's going to uninstall that. And then it's going to install the new version. And the first time it does this, as I said before, when I click next, it's going to throw me an error. Yep, there it is. When I click next, there's my error. I simply quit. Okay. Hopefully you didn't get that error. And hopefully I want you to stay where you are. Let me run this again real quick, and it will install this time just fine. I don't know what the issue is. Haven't really talked to tech support about it to take it to ground. It's annoying, but it's not, it's consistently behaves so I can install the app. So I don't really worry too much about it. It is annoying, but that's it. Just waiting for it to ask me for my Mac password. There we go. All right, again, running through my wizard, accepting the agreement, clicking next. It's going to install, and then it's going to go ahead and install, and then I will be where you guys are. And again, I don't want you to click ahead, please, just bear with me. Won't take but a second. All right, just as an FYI for you all, enter the advanced settings, and you don't have to click in here, but I'm going to show you what the advanced settings are. Okay. What's the collector name? When we set up a collector and we set up sources, we've got to give them names. By default, it uses your host name as your collector name. And I like that. That works fine for me. It makes a lot of sense. What category do I want to put in? Do I want to specify a host name, a description? What time zone do I want to use? By default, it will use my browser time zone settings. Do I want to restrict to how much CPU percentage it can use? Like I said, it won't use but about 1% of your CPU, so don't worry about it. You can delete this collector after being offline for 12 hours, whatever, some things in here. Under the URL, here's where it finds and goes to the URL for our Sumo Logic environment. If you want to override this because you're using some sort of an API URL, you can override this. Proxy settings, do I need to use proxy to send this data out? Yes, no. Sources, do I want to add sources? I'm going to add my sources later, so I'm going to leave this alone. And then the other question is, who do I run this as? Now, this is interesting, and this is kind of fun. Again, when you're in a Mac world, you run as root. This runs as root. If you're on Windows, it runs as administrator, not your user account, which means that if I have files and stuff like that, that means root or administrator needs to have rights to those files, to be able to see those. Or I can tell it to run as a custom user and run as my account or whatever you want. More than likely, you probably want to use the root or administrative user for that particular machine, right? So I just want you to be familiar with those settings. They're not on the test. You don't have to worry about them. I'm just showing you just as an FYI. Questions on that? All right. So when I click next, and I'd like you to click next as well, I have a choice. We're going to basically set up some sort of an access key or token to be able to authenticate into Sumo Logic. Now, what's the difference between an access key and a token? A token is a one-use thing. I can take and create a token. I can only use it once when I'm installing a collector or installing something. That token is going to authenticate on my behalf. Now, an access key, on the other hand, can be used multiple times. So I can take an access key and I can use it on this computer, on another computer, on another computer if I want to. I can reuse it over and over again. For simplicity's sake, we're going to go ahead and use an access key. So please check access key. Please click next. Now it wants the access ID and access key. To get those, we're going to go back to Sumo. And the way we're going to do this is, again, in my add collector up here, to the right of that, I have tokens where I can generate a token, or I can click on access keys and I can generate an access key. We're going to choose access keys since we're choosing an access key. I can reuse this access key over and over and over again if I want to. And down here, when I click on that, it takes me down here where my access keys are. And I can add an access key. Okay. So I'm going to click add an access key. I'm going to give it a name. You can call it anything you want to. Since this is going to be for my client, I'm going to call it client and then underscore AK for access key. Whatever your naming convention is.
How'd you get the access key again? I had a pop up and I wasn't able to see. Sorry about that.
No problem. No problem. So I was back in managed data. I was back in collection.
Uh-huh.
Over here, there's a little link that says access keys.
Oh, okay.
No problem. Yep. And then here, I'm going to click the add button. For your name, like I said, you can call it whatever you want to. I'm going to call mine client underscore AK for access key, all one word. If you need, if you don't already have access to your environment, you may need to add your domain in here. We don't need to do that. You shouldn't need to do that. So we'll leave that blank. So I am now ready to click create key. And when I click create key, you'll see it gives me my access ID and it gives me my access key. Now, word of caution here, okay? If your company says anytime you generate an access ID and access key that you use someplace, you should record them in some system log somewhere or someplace somewhere. This is the only time that you will see the access key. The only time. Once I leave this screen, I will never be able to see the access key again. So if your company has a policy that says we got to document access keys, now is the time to do that. Now, my company doesn't require that. So I can very easily take this access ID and I can click the copy button. Then I can go back to where I'm installing the software and I can paste that in. Let me tab down to this next field. Go back over here where my access key is, click the copy button on that. Go back over here and paste in my access key. So all I'm doing is taking the access ID and the access key and I'm pasting. Now, when I'm done with this, again, if you need to do anything with your access key, it's the only time you're going to see it. So if you need to paste it someplace else, feel free to. But I don't have to. I'm going to click done. Now here, I can see here's my access ID that I just created. And if I click the edit button, you will see that I can see the access ID just fine, but I cannot see that access key. You cannot, I cannot. It's part of the standard that we use. If you need to create another access key, then you create another access key. Now back over here to our installation, having pasted the ID and the key, we click next. And now it's going to try to connect to Sumo Logic, encrypting that data using the access ID and the access key. So it's logged in as us. It says, I have connected. I am good to go. I am going to click finish. And now if I go into my collector and I look for my host name, which my host name was Jay Meredith, if you look for your host name, you should now see a new collector. Okay, and that's what I've got here is my collector. I don't have any sources yet, just my collector. My collector says it's healthy and it's installed. Life is good. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is lab 1. So here in our lab guide, if I scroll through here, I can see basically this is what we just did. Any questions, problems, issues?
How long does it take? It says initializing. Oh, please hold while we connect to Sumo Logic.
Are you running on a Mac?
No.
Okay. Shouldn't take, it may take a few minutes. It shouldn't take that long. I would say probably within 3 to 5 minutes at the latest.
Okay.
The reason I asked about a Mac is that I know that the not the Intel, but the M1, M2 chips that are coming out, takes a longer time. And it's not so much a problem because of the Intel chip, it's that you're also on a Zoom call. So it's a bandwidth issue along with an encryption issue. So if you were not on the Zoom call, it'd probably run a lot faster.
Where do we verify the collector that we just added?
Okay. You'll go into the training environment, go into manage data, click on collection. And then if you type in your host name, whatever your host name is for your computer, you should be able to see it. Okay.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Is there a way to check the host name? I can't remember my host name.
I'm sorry?
I cannot remember my host name. Is
Your
there
host
a
name, okay. Are you on a Windows machine?
Mac?
You're on a Mac, okay. Then let's do this. In your Mac menu in your Apple menu in the upper left-hand corner, click on that and
Okay.
click on about this Mac.
Okay.
And it will then show you your Mac with various information.
Mhm.
In here, let's see, I can't remember where the host name is in here somewhere. The other thing you do is go to a terminal window and just type in host name. That'll work. But hang on a second. Let me go to system report here.
John, is it at the bottom of that page? If you just move that window up,
Yeah. Oh,
and at the bottom,
there you go. Right there. Yeah. That should be your host name right there. Or as I said, you can also go to terminal window and type in the word host name. And it will tell you what your host name is on a Mac. So hopefully that helps you out. Now, a couple folks are commenting they're having problems trying to get it's stuck on installing the collector. That's fine. Yep. That's fine.
You know, mine was still it was still going on, but I see it in the dashboard. So I just canceled out of it.
Okay. Yeah, you're probably in good shape. Yeah. Okay. And so you're using a Mac. How do I search for the newly installed collector? I assume your question is, how do I see the collector software on my Mac? So let me answer that question. So on the Mac, those of you on a Mac or a Windows machine, you can go into where you add, remove programs. In the case of a Mac, you would go into your Finder, right? Launch your good old Finder. And then here under Applications on Finder, if you scroll down under the S, you should see a folder called Sumo Logic Collector. And here is where your collector is. And there's an uninstall app for those of you having problems uninstalling that you can run as well. So, but that's how you can find out where it is. Now, as far as Sumo is concerned, to find the collector, you go into the training environment, service.sumologic.com. You go under manage data here, you go under collection. And then if you search for your host name, you should be able to see it. Okay. Just for fun here, let me see if I can find, I want to see installed collectors. And I don't care about Jay Meredith. So I'm looking for installed collectors. And let's see if there's a way.
You did not select installed collectors.
You're right. I lost that. Okay. Installed collectors, I actually want to see maybe up to 50 of them. What I want to see is the newly installed collectors. So last hour, no, there's no way I can sort this. What a bummer. Okay, yeah. I was just trying to see if I could find an easy way to see your collectors. Okay, looks like I found somebody's collector here. That's probably, that's not one of you guys. Your collector shouldn't have any sources underneath them. So the stuff underneath here, these are sources. So, all right. In fact, what we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead and add a source. So, for example, Caleb's, I see your PC right there. Yay. See, Tom, let's see, metric training, Paul T. See your, so forth and so on. So hopefully that gives you an idea. Whatever you called it. All right. So now what we want to do is we want to go ahead and do lab 2. We're going to create a metric host, a metric source, and then that's going to bring metrics in that we can then see and ingest and all that good stuff. So what I want you to do is I want you to find your collector. So again, back to manage data, back to collection, find your collector, filter for your collector. And then over in your collector here, there's an add link. And you'll see I can add a source or I can add a script action. You can script all of the sources if you want to, but that's a conversation for another day. What we simply want to do is we want to add source. So I click add source here. Now, because this is an installed collector, that's why we see the various sources that we can install. If this were a hosted collector, I'd see a lot more things I could install. But what we want to do is we want to find the one called host metrics. So you can click on a local file, a remote file on another machine, Docker logs, scripts, all that stuff. The one that we want is a host metrics. So let's click on host metrics. And then as far as a name goes, you can call it, maybe your initials, host metrics, or host metrics with your initials, whatever you want to call it. I really don't care. Let me see what the directions say I'm supposed to call it. Name host metrics _ your initials. So I'll follow the directions such as they are. I'm not so much worried about this name. Now, the source category, that one I'm worried about. What I'd like you to do, I'd like you to type in host metric / and then your host name. Host metric / your host name. And there's a reason why I want you to do it that way. So, and you can use your host name, you can use your computer name, you can use whatever, but I want it to be host metric / and then something.
So host name, like my computer name is different than my collector name.
Okay, yeah, quite frankly, I don't care about your collector name, but okay, thank you. Good to know. Good to know. I don't care which one you use here. I just want to make sure it says host metric / and then put something there to represent you.
Oh,
Could be
okay.
your username, could be your host name, could be your computer name, could be your collector name. I don't really care. Now, just so you know, under here, under metadata, we can add key value pairs if we want to. I'm just mentioning this to you as an aside. It's not on the test, but we can add a field name. So for example, maybe I want to put what department this computer is part of, right? So I get field name is department. The value in my case would be education. I'm part of the training team, right? I could put BU business unit. I could put, whatever the heck I want to here. And that way I can search for those specific field names in my metric or log queries. That's why we have those. Now, since I opened this up, I'm going to go ahead and throw it to the trash can, close it up. Scan interval. You can leave this at 1 minute. That's fine. I'm going to change mine to 10 seconds. I'm going to grab data in here every 10 seconds. Every 10 seconds, I'm just going to grab data for me here. Okay. If your collector is showing a status issue, that may make them an issue. Hopefully it will clear itself out, Curie. So hopefully it will resolve itself once we put a source in, but we'll have to see. Then when I scroll down here, what metrics do I want? And if I open up CPU, for example, I can see all the cool metrics that I can get. And if you're not sure what these metrics are, you can click on the bubbles to the right and see what those metrics are. Now, I'm going to grab all of my metrics. If there's stuff in here you don't want to grab, you don't want to become available to, us or whatever, that's fine. I don't really care. I'm not worried about, privacy is something I'm concerned about, but I'm not worried about my privacy on my computer. So I'm going to send everything to this. If you're worried about, maybe your memory or your CPU or whatever, then don't select those checkboxes. Again, I remind you at the end of the class, we're going to clean this up anyway, but in case you're worried. When you're done, let's click save. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I have my collector here with a triangle. And now I have my first source, which is my host metric source. Now, here's my source category. And to the right of my source category, I see this blue icon. If I click on this blue icon, I should see in just a few minutes, as I refresh this, some data coming in. But it takes a while. My computer is in New Hampshire. The Sumo Logic environment's in Virginia. The cloud, we're on an AWS platform, is somewhere in Virginia. It takes a few minutes to get to Virginia. So what I propose here, ladies and gentlemen, is I propose this is a good opportunity to take a break. So unless anybody objects, let's take a 5-minute break. And I'll see you back when this timer gets down to 0. So please take a break. Have yourselves a good time. I'll see you back here in about 4 minutes and 50 seconds. Thanks. And folks, hopefully we are back. We've had a nice little 5-minute break. And so when I last left, right, we were looking at our, again, here's our collector, here's our source. If I go out here to the source category and to the right of my source category, I click on this blue button, it's going to open up a metric editor here, a metric query. And here in my metric query, I am now starting to see data. So my data is starting to come in, and I can now start to see some of my metrics that are in fact coming in. Okay. And if I want to, I can use this selector to select what specific metric or whatever I'm interested in. Should I grab one here that'll make some sense here? Disk used. There we go. So I can use this legend down here as my selector to select what I want. Now we're going to talk about this interface in a little bit, but this is our interface that we use to write a metric query. And so we're going to go in here and write metric queries and play around here and all that stuff. But hopefully now when you go into your collector and you go into your source, and if you click on this blue icon, it's going to open up this a panel like this, and hopefully you're starting to see your metrics come in as well. Okay. For those of you who didn't install, if you want to search for my collector, J Meredith, spelled that way, you can find my collector, and again, click on that button and you can use my collector to poke around. Okay. And that was lab 2. So in lab 2, they want us to create a metric source, which we did. I've enabled all of my metrics, which I did. Again, I can now find it, see it. Now I can now see my data, which I can do. Now, in lab 3, what we're going to do is we're going to sit there and write a query. We're going to write a query here, and we're going to play in this query tool. So the way we write a query, a new metric query, is we go up to this new blue button and we can create a new log query here, a new metric query here, traces, spans, all kinds of stuff. We want metrics. Now, in my metric query, if it says here, enter a metric query like mine does, that's not ideal. What we want to do is we want to go out here to the far right where these 3 vertical dots are, and I want to change this back to basic mode. So you'll find in our metric explorer, we've got 2 modes. In fact, let me be honest with you. Years ago, we had a different metric query tool. And a metric query tool, the feedback we got from our customers was it was too complicated, it was too hard to use and stuff like that. So we took that feedback much to heart, and we revamped this new metric interface. And so the basic mode allows me to grab key value pairs, right? So in here, I can say, okay, what metric do I want, right? I can pick what metric I want. I want CPU sys. And if I don't specify what CPU sys I want, it's going to show me all of them. And as you can see, I got CPU sys coming from all kinds of different things, right? All kinds of different collectors and all that fun stuff. And if I want to, down here, there's a time series showing me my values. Here in my chart, I can see what looks like a big old spaghetti factory. And I can have these as line charts if I want to, or I can go in here and change this as an area chart. I can change this as a bar chart, or let me go back to line for a second. I can also make this a honeycomb, and it will then show me all of those things with a honeycomb value. And in my honeycomb value, I can use, red, yellow, green colors based on the values that are there, right? So if I want to see what my CPU sys is, and I kind of color code these, I can certainly do that, okay? Now, let me get back into my time series. Let me turn it back to time series. Now, I want to filter for a specific collector or a specific collectors. So if I go in here and say filter, and I say source category equals, if I do a host metric / J Meredith, and then I run this. To run a query, all you got to do is click on this blue button or hit the enter key on your keyboard. Now I only get one value. Now I'm seeing my CPU sys from my computer. If I wanted to, let me delete that by clicking the Xbox, go to source category and say something like host metrics /star. Now I'm looking at all of the source categories that start with the word host metrics. And hopefully I see quite a few of them. I see Petras, I see NRH, I see all kinds of different. And if I want to, I could see them either as a chart. Let me make this a line chart if you don't mind. Or I can see them as, a pie chart or whatever visualization that I want. But here's where you can select basically what you want to see and how you want to see it. And this is what we call basic mode, because you get to pick the metric that you want. You get to pick the filters or filter it however you want to. If I want to, by the way, I can also add an operator here and say, maybe I want to see the average. And so now I can say average by node, average by collector, average by whatever. I'm going to leave that blank, just average, flat out. And that now reduces everything to one value. It's going to take the average of all of these CPU sys from all of these host metric machines, and it's going to calculate the average. So writing a query here to get what you want is not particularly difficult, I think. And that was one of the complaints that we had from before, is it was very complicated because you had to really know how to write this stuff and what to do and all that good stuff. All right. Now, one thing I will mention now, here's where I specify my time range. So it's set back here for 15 minutes. And if I look from here to there, the space is 15 minutes. Maybe I want it to be something different. Maybe I want it to be 3 hours, 24 hours, whatever. Maybe if I go to custom, I want to pick the date range. Fine. If under relative, whatever time you want is not listed here, let's say I want to go back 2 days instead of 3 days. All I have to do is come into this box, get rid of what's there. And if I want to go back 2 days, it's -2, D for days, H for hours, M for minutes. And so it will take me back 2 days. So you can pick whatever time frame of information that you want to see here. Now back to lab 3 here, if you don't mind. Again, it wants me to select the CPU load average 15 minutes for all hosts. So let's change this to CPU, and I'll start typing in CPU, and you'll see it gives me a long list of what I want here. I want load average 15 minutes, and I'm going to run that. So this is going to give me my CPU load average for all the CPUs I have coming into Sumo Logic. And as you can see, I've got quite a few by looking at my chart or by looking at my time series. Lots of different systems coming in here. Okay. Let me close this up for a second. Close that up for a second. We pin this, make it easy for me to find. And so the next thing it wants me to do here on the next page is it says, okay, you see this spaghetti factory we have. And now they want me to specify my specific host, right? Or your specific host. So I can go back out here and I can say filter by source category, and I can type in, host metrics / and as I do, it gives me my choices of what I can select. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my specific host. And then when I run this by either hitting that blue button or hitting the enter key on my keyboard, I now see that particular metric value. I am seeing my CPU load average based on the last 15 minutes, based on that metric. All right. Now I want to compare this with other hosts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another query. Over here on this plus sign is where I can add an additional query. When I click on that plus sign, and I want you to click on that plus sign, again, the metric that I'm going to use is the same one, CPU load average. You might notice it's going to add it to the recently used metrics. Save me a little bit of time. Now, this time I want to compare it against all of my hosts, or maybe what I wanted, the average of all my hosts. So I'm not going to specify a specific source category here. In fact, if I run this, you're now going to see my CPU getting washed in there with everybody else's CPU. It's kind of hard to see. But what I want here is the average. So I'm going to go in here to this, and actually let me make sure I get the right thing here that we want. Yeah, we want average. So if I go into add operator and I say average, and I run this again, now that's going to take this line and turn it into an average. That's this point right here. So here's my CPU load average for 15 minutes. Here is the average of all of the other computers. So as you can see, I'm running much lower than most computers. Why is that? Well, heck, I'm a laptop, right? I'm not a server. I'm not running anything serious. These machines are running things that are serious, right? I'm not running anything serious. So hopefully that makes sense. But you can, I can, we can see quickly here how we can display this data. And I can also look at the actual data, the information in time series. I can look at it as a chart, all kinds of cool stuff here that you and I can see it by. Okay, I can even see it by a table. There's my raw data here for table. So that's how we do that fun stuff. Now that takes care of lab 3. Any questions so far? All right, one thing we advocate, the best query that you get to write is the one you don't have to write. So what we do is in Sumo Logic, we have a bunch of pre-built applications. So if you go into our training environment, or even your own environment, if you will, and if you go into the navigation panel and the main menu here, you'll see we've got something here called the app catalog. And here in the app catalog, we have several hundred apps that are ready to go that you can install and see what the heck is going on, right? For example, if you happen to use Zoom, like we happen to use Zoom, I can click on the Zoom app and I can see what kind of information this app can provide for us. These queries, these dashboards and stuff are already built. So I can see what the administrator is doing. I can get a sense for who's authenticating, how they're authenticating. I can see what sort of guest activity I have, how my meeting security is going, outages, all kinds of neat stuff. Each one of these represents a dashboard, and on this dashboard, I have a series of panels. These panels each represent some sort of a query, either a log query or a metric query. Now, what I want to do is I want to look at, see if I have a host metric query or host metric panel. So if I type in here host, you'll see that I've got a host metric application that you and I can install. And if I click on that host metric integration, you can see I get to see information about CPUs. I get to see information about disk, about memory, about network utilization, an overview dashboard, TCP dashboard, all of that cool stuff. You'll notice there's not an IP dashboard here. I believe that's a test question that will come up for you. So it says, which of the following is not? And IP is the correct answer. Now, for those of you who've been playing with Sumo Logic before, you notice we used to have a thing that said add to library. Well, we've changed this. We've changed this to add integration. And the reason we changed it to add integration is we want to make it easy for you to install our apps. What is involved in installing our apps? Well, you really need to have a data source set up, okay? So when we add integration, we're going to walk you through the whole setup if you need to, if we don't see that there's a data source there. So that's why this is now changed to add integration. And we're in the process of going in our app catalog and moving all of our apps over to this add integration. So when I click on add integration, and that's what I want you to do, says before ingesting your data, here's a setup document to make sure that you've got everything set up. You need to set up your collectors and all that stuff. Well, we did that. We did that way back in lab 1 and lab 2. So I don't need to open this setup document. We're in good shape. I'm going to go ahead and click next. It says, okay, configure your host metric. So here's where I make a connection to this dashboard to my source data. Remember, we called our source category host metric / our username or host name or whatever, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to type in something different here. The directions want us to type in here host metric, and then whatever you called your computer, whatever you called your, whatever you put in that source category field. And if you're not sure what you put in that source category field, you can go back here to manage data, back here to collections. There's your source category field. You can swipe over it, you can copy it, and go there. So again, what are we trying to do? I'm trying to go to my app catalog. I am searching for my host metrics, this app right here. Again, I'm going to click add integration. And I'm going to do it a little differently. And there's a specific reason why I'm going to do this a little differently. I'm going to type in host metrics /star. That will let me see all of ours, yours, mine, and everybody's host metrics. Okay.
Do we all do
Sometimes when
that
it says-
or no?
I'm sorry?
Did you want us all to do that or?
It's up to you. I recommend you do a host metric with your source category. So
Okay.
normally it'd be host metric /J Meredith in my case, but there's a reason why I'm doing this a little differently, and I'm going to show you in a minute. Okay. The question is, you'll do it based on what is it that you want to see. If you want to see only information about your host, then your host should be in there. If I want to see information about my host and all the other hosts in the host metric folder or container, then I do what I did here. Does that answer your question, man?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good. And then as far as the folder name, what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in host metrics. That's fine. But I'm going to add my initials to make it easy for me to see. And just to show you I'm not making this stuff up, I'm going to type in today's date. So I believe today is the 19th. I'll type in 0719. Okay. And by default, this is going to add this to my personal folder, which is fine. That's exactly where I want it. And I can scroll down here to see what's going on. And then when I click next, and I'd like you to go ahead and just get the information filled in here, click next. And now it will in fact install this app into our personal folder, tying it to this data source. So if I give it a minute here, obviously, we're all having a good time installing our app, so it's taking a little bit of time here. Patience is not one of my big virtues. It will get done. There we go. Good. So it says success, or it tells us failure. Hopefully it says success. Now, if I go into my personal folder, now I see I have this host metric, JWM 0719, which is what I just installed. Okay. Somebody's trying to call me there. I'm going to reject that call. And so if I open it up, I see I've got a bunch of pre-built dashboards. Now I'm going to start with the overview dashboard, host metric overview. And if I click on that, I now see here is my average CPU idle for all of my systems. Here I see my average load time. It's still loading that one, still running that one. But I can now see some information here, bytes used and all that fun stuff. I can go into my CPU, host metric CPU dashboard. And again, I can see my CPU information here as well, the average CPU information. Now I'm seeing the average CPU information for all of these machines. So this allows me to see what it is I want to see. So if I only wanted to focus on my host, on that source category, I said source category was host metric /J Meredith. But if I want to see all of the hosts or all of my servers or all of my whatever, I put a star in there to see all of those things, host metric /star. So this allows me to see various pieces of information here. And that's all we're trying to show you here in Lab 4 is how you can do that. And you can look at these dashboards and kind of get the information that you're seeing. If you wanted to, you can open up any one of these dashboards. To click on any one of these panels, you click on this button, and this takes you to an old metric interface. This is that old metric interface that we used to have. So for those of you familiar with Sumo Logic from last year before, this was our old metric interface. Good news, to switch to the old metric interface to the new metric interface, all you have to do is go up here to the corner where the 3 vertical dots are, click on it and say, switch to new metric. Okay, and it'll ask you, sure you want to do that? Yes, I do. And now it's switched it to the new metric. Now, again, what mode am I in? Am I in basic mode or am I in advanced mode? If I click on the 3 dots here and it says basic mode, that means you must be in advanced mode. If it says advanced mode, that means you must be in basic mode. For example, this one right here is in basic mode. It has metric space, filter space, add operator. That's basic mode. If it says, enter a metric query, that's advanced mode. We'll get into the difference between basic mode and advanced mode a little bit later on. But I think you would agree with me that this is much easier to start creating the visualizations and stuff we want. This is much easier than this interface, where we don't have as much control over what we want to see and how we want to see it and all that fun stuff. All right. And that takes care of lab number 4. Also in lab number 4, it talks about how we can go in and change various things. So let me take a moment here and let me do that real quick, just so you get some exposure to this. So again, here I am in the classic metrics. I want to change to the new metric interface. Everything we're going to do in this class is going to be a new metric interface. The old metric interface, the classic metric interface is kind of going to go away the dodo bird. Now, over here, you'll see I've got my display options. So here's where I can choose my color palette, some settings for my overall display. Over here are my display overrides. I can actually, if I have more than one value here, I can actually create a complex or combination type chart. Here's where my axes are, my axes properties. I can change my property size, all that stuff. I can show my left axis. I can show a right axis if I wanted to. If I want to make dual axes, I can do that, Legend, what do I want to do with my legend? Do I want to show it as a table? Do I want to show it as a, what do I want to show here as far as my table? Map text. Somebody raised their hand. Go ahead and ask your question, folks.
So this is Dami. For the source category, I did star like you did earlier. So if I wanted to drill down to one person, like one host, how do I do that?
Okay. So if you want to focus on only one person or one thing, what you could do is you would actually modify this query for that specific user. So if you want to focus on a specific user, you can do that. I would just change this to that particular user, and that then should show you that information. Oh, I know what's screwed up here. They should say host metrics. Okay, that explains why my results didn't come out right. I made a typo. Shame on me. Okay. There we go. That's what I was expecting to see, all your different values. So again, I'm seeing what you're seeing. If I want to focus on a specific user, in fact, let me not pick me. Let me pick somebody else here. Pelona, P-L-E-O-N-A.
Petra. No, E-O.
E-O, thank you. N-A?
Yeah.
Thank you. So now, again, you can do that. So hopefully that answers your question. However, let me also answer your question this way, which is even easier. See my legend down here? I can click on my legend and focus it on whoever I want to focus it on. And if I click on the same one I focused on before, it removes all of it. I can see all of them back. So that's even easier. Using the power of your legend. Of course, that means you got to show a legend. So if you choose not to show a legend, you're not going to have the ability to do that. All right. So that answer the question, sir? We're doing okay, folks? I hope you think that this is fairly easy and fairly straightforward as far as building these visualizations. That's kind of our goal. And Daniela, you got a question?
Oh, never mind. I was gonna ask, how do you show legend? I find it.
Okay, good. Good, excellent. Yep. Yeah, and I would encourage you to, you know, like I said, as my colleague Odell likes to say, you know, when you get a new product like this, you know, it's like a new car, you want to kick the tires and take it for a spin and all that stuff. And I would encourage you to go ahead and look at some of these settings and poke around. Obviously, I don't have time to go through all of it. I really don't. I'm sorry, but I don't. Okay. And that takes us to lab number 5. So if there aren't any questions about lab number 4 or earlier labs, I'm going to move on to lab number 5. All right. In lab number 5, we're just going to play with some data here and poke around and have ourselves a good time. So first of all, notice I got a bunch of tabs open here. It's starting to get a little busy. All right. Maybe you like that. Maybe you don't like that. I can close these tabs obviously one at a time. Or if I click on the 3 vertical dots on any one of these tabs, you'll notice I have the option to say close all tabs. So I'm going to close all tabs just to clean it up, make it a little easier for me to see. Then I'm going to click on this new blue button and I'm going to click on metric search. Everything we're doing today is in metric search. It's all about metrics. Okay. Now the metric that I want here in lab number 5 is my net in bytes. So I'm going to type in here net, and as I start typing in, it starts filtering my choices. So I'll grab net in bytes. And if I click query, it's going to show me my net in bytes for all of my computers, right? And in fact, there were too many of them. So it filtered and showed me only the first 1,000. Okay. So what I want to do here is I actually want to change this, and I want to grab the rate of change for the sum. So if I go over here to add operator and I choose rate, and in order to do rate, what do I want to do? Rate of, rate and sum. I want to do the rate, the change, if you will, of my sum. And I'm not going to specify a by here. So I'm going to say sum by everything. But that's going to give me a single value. Now, somebody raised a hand. Is there a question?
So that would be me, Dami. I have a question. I'm trying to understand this. So on this page, what is the difference between this one, doing it this way, and actually adding the matrix integration? It's still giving us the same thing, right?
Okay, right. What we're doing here is we're building a query.
Okay.
We don't have a pre-built query for this. We don't have a pre-built dashboard. So we're actually building this query.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Now, really what I want to do here, and let's get around to the use case, because that's a good question, Danny. My use case is I want to compare my net in bytes with my net out bytes. And so I want to see the difference between my net in bytes and my net out bytes. That's what I want to do. That's the use case for this lab. Now, in order to see, here's my net in bytes. I got that. That's great. I want to add another query. And what I want to use as far as my metric is I want to grab my net out bytes. So I type in net, and I want to grab my net out bytes. And again, I want the same operators as before. I want my rate. I want my sum. So now I'm comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges. Comparing my net in bytes to my net out bytes. And you'll see they're fairly close, right? Ins, outs, ins, outs, ins, outs, ins, out. Okay. And so, but I want to see the difference between them. So I'm going to add a third query. And in order to compare the difference between my net in bytes and my net out bytes, one of the easiest things you can do is this query right here is represented by hashtag A. This query is represented by hashtag B. What I can do is I can say hashtag B minus hashtag A. However, this format, this basic structure doesn't allow for that. So here, ladies and gentlemen, over to the right, my 3 ellipses, I want to click on advanced mode. And there are some functions and some things that just do not work in basic mode. This is one of those things. So I flip this to advanced mode. By the way, whatever mode you flip it to, that's the mode it will use when you create a new metric query. But I'll come back to that in a second. So now I can type in here, hashtag B minus sign, hashtag A. And when I run this, now I see should see all three of these. Why? Hold on a second. Why? See, I know why. Okay, gotcha. Try this again. Sorry, guys. Okay. So now I see all three of these. Now, what I can do is I can hide these two. I can go up here and I can deselect that. I can deselect that. So now all I'm left with is my result, my difference, my change. Okay. In order to do this hashtag B minus hashtag A, you've got to be in advanced mode. Got to be the way it is. Now, one other thing, if I create another query going forward, whatever mode I was in last time is the mode that I will be in. So for example, it says enter a metric query, that's advanced mode. If for some reason I shift this back to basic mode, type something else in here. Okay, add another query, it's going to be in basic mode. In fact, if I go up here and grab a new tab, go to metric, this will also be in basic mode. Once I shift this to advanced mode and I add a new metric query, it will be in advanced mode. So whatever mode I was in last is the mode I will be in going forward. Just want you to be aware of that. And if you're in advanced mode and you want to shift back to basic mode, go out here to the right to the three dots and go back to basic mode. If you want to be in advanced mode, like I said, go out to the three dots, shift it to advanced mode. Whatever mode you want to be in, okay? Just be cognizant of that. And lab 5, like I said, you'll see that they did the hashtag B minus hashtag A. And I now see my results. I can turn off these so that I only see this result and I can see my difference. Okay. Now, again, this gets into the conversation about basic versus advanced. Whatever mode you're in last is the mode that you're going to be in. And there are some things you can only do in advanced mode. Now, there's a question. Somebody raised their hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, a question about, it's kind of hard to see the difference between the two results in the chart. Is there a way to change the color of each result, or is that?
What happens is, use this, hang on a second, let me go back to that result. It uses your palette. So first of all, let me get rid of this. Let me get rid of this, okay? And so here in my palette, you notice my colors here are blue, light blue, and so forth. So I may want a different color so things are well differentiated. And also let me enable these so they can be shown. Sorry about that. But you may want to change your color palette to something very drastic. That's an easy way. Now, one other thing, down here on the last tab is your JSON. You can actually modify your JSON to pick whatever colors you want for the first value, the second value, the third value, using RGB colors.
Gotcha.
So yeah. Yep. And Greg mentioned he increased the thickness of the line, which helps show the difference too. Yeah, that's great. Yep. So, and again, the question is, what are you trying to show people? You know, are you trying to show them these three values? Are you trying to show them only the difference? What are you trying to show them? Okay. So, yeah. What story are you trying to tell here? Any questions on lab 5? Let's move on to lab 6. We want to talk about filtering our time series using advanced query. From now on, we're just going to use the advanced query mode just so you guys are aware of it, okay? And we're just going to show you some queries here to kind of make sense of things and all that good stuff. So we're going to go in and create a new metric query. And what we want to do when we create this new metric query, we want to be in advanced mode. So here in advanced mode, I can type in any field that I want and its value. Remember, you don't have to type in the metric first, you can type in anything. So here, for example, I can specify content type. So I'm going to grab content type from that pick list. And then I can say, you know what, I want host metrics. And if I run this, and I'm a big believer of code a little bit, test a little bit, right? So C, make sure this gets you some results back. right? Now that it's got you some results back, now we can kind of filter down, right? Now I can say maybe source category equals host metrics, specifically my metric or specifically everyone's metric. All right, so what metrics do I want? And, again, I can see this as a chart, whatever. What they want me to do though is grab host metrics. They want me to grab my specific host metrics. So let me change this back to me. Or back to you or whatever. Now, keep in mind that I'm actually showing all of my different metrics, right? My disk reads, my disk writes, my CPU utilizations, everything. It's in here, right? I'm seeing everything. TCP, all that fun stuff. So if I want to specify a specific metric, there's a switch for that, right? Metric equals, there it is. I start typing it in, it says metric equals. And then it gives me a pick list here of what metrics do I want. And I think I want, per this directions here, my CPU sys. So here's my CPU sys. So now it's showing me my CPU sys for my machine based on my overall host metrics. So again, it's the same. You can do the same basic thing in basic mode. The difference is here you're freeform. You can just start typing in the particular field, the key, the value, the key, the value, the key, the value. Okay. And that's what we're trying to show you. Now, you may ask yourself, why? What's the big deal? Well, if I want to say, and I want to filter based on some value here. For example, on my CPU, it certainly never gets down to 1%. It certainly never gets higher than 4%. So if I wanted to, I can type in another command, and that commands are joined together with a pipe. That's a vertical bar pipe, right? And I can say something like filter. And here, I can say min is greater than 1. I think there's an and in there somewhere. Yeah, that's what I thought. And max is greater than or less than 4. Now, if I run this, you'll notice it didn't change anything because my values are between 1 and 4. If I change this to say 3 and rerun it, now all of a sudden I lose my data because I'm filtering where my max, my min is greater than 1 and my max is less than 3. So you can filter values. Now you may ask yourself, well, why? Why would I want to do that? Well, what if I'm not looking at John Meredith's host? What if I'm looking at all of my hosts and I want to see which ones are highly loaded or lowly loaded? Maybe I can do that. Let me go back here and let me just change this and make it broad for a second. So here I went from 1 to 10, right? So if I say I want to make my min 7 here, my min 7 and my max 10, that should filter everything out except for this one up here, that desktop. So if I run it, sure enough, that's exactly what it does. But the point is, you can't run the filter command in basic mode. You got to run it in the advanced mode. This type of command, you got to do in advanced mode. Additionally, if I wanted to, I could do something like average greater than 25. Okay. Now, nobody's average is greater than 25. So we're all seeing little machines and stuff like that. So let me get it's greater than 5, see if that works. There we go. I've got some values here that are at least greater than 5. I'm still not listed here. If I go average greater than 2, now I see a few more. So the point is that you and I can start writing queries to start seeing what we're looking for. Now, from a real practical perspective, what I want to do is I want to show metrics maybe that are getting over 95% or over 90% or something like that, that are getting warm or getting hot. And therefore I need to maybe think about setting up a new machine or if I've gone on the cloud, maybe I want to invoke Kubernetes to expand and, clone up another environment, spin up another environment, whatever. But this is how you do that. Now in lab 7 here, we're going to get into AWS load balancer. Okay. So AWS, we obviously have a partnership with AWS as we do with others, but we do a lot with AWS. There is a link here in this document. I'm going to go ahead and click on this link that talks about various AWS services that published CloudWatch metrics. And in the case of these CloudWatch metrics, there are some restrictions and some information we have with regards to this. So I would encourage you to take this link, put it someplace, because it probably will find its way in a test question somewhere where you may have to look at something here, okay? You know, whether it's ELB or whatever. So if you want to look at your metrics, maybe for ELB, you can see what limits we might have or some other information. This, by the way, is not our documentation. This is AWS's documentation, all right? So anyway, what they want us to do is they want you and I to be able to monitor our AWS metrics, our automatic load balancing. So we're going to create a new query, and we're going to specify the source category equals lab/AWS/metrics. So if you don't mind, I'm going to copy this code that's here. I'm going to go out here to my Sumo Logic environment, grab a new metric query, make sure I'm in advanced mode. If it says basic mode here, I am in advanced mode. Paste this query in. As I said, put my cursor in here and paste this query in. There we go. And run it. Now, truth be told, I don't need these double quotes. These double quotes are only needed if I have a space somewhere in here. Then I need the double quotes. So whether I run it with double quotes or not run it with double quotes shouldn't make any difference. Okay. So here I can see my AWS metrics. Now, what I want to do is I want to filter this specifically looking for a specific metric. So I want to find a specific metric here. HTTP code ELB 5XX. So metric equals, and it gives me a pick list of my metrics here that I can use. And I want ELB 5XX. So I want to see any 500 errors from my ELB environment. And again, there they are listed. And what I want to see is I want to see the average of those. So I'm going to type in AVG, and there is my average. And I can show this as a chart, and life is wonderful. Now you may ask yourself, okay, great. What's the big deal? Well, what I want to do is I want to compare it against what it was a day ago. So I'm going to add another query. Basically take this query, if you don't mind, I'm going to copy this query and I'm going to paste it down here. And what I want to do is I want to add a time shift operator. Shift. And I want to go back 1 day. Now, normally in our logging tool, when you want to go back in time, you type in a minus sign. In this case, you do not. So what I'm looking at here is I'm looking at my average. So I have two values in here, my yesterday value, my today value. There's two different colors in here. I'm sure you can't see them very easily. So let me try to change it so you can. Why am I not seeing my two different colors?
I was having this problem earlier and I thought it was related to the modifying that JSON thing.
Okay. It might have, I mean, it might have been, but I don't know that that's, tell you what, if I disable that, I see that. If I, and you can't disable them both, so you disable them one at a time, they are there. Okay. So I think they're both there. It's just they're superseding on one another. It's kind of hard to see it. But I'm actually think I'm getting the right results here. I'm just not interpreting it right. Curie, is there a question?
No, so I was thinking because of the fact that you're doing two different queries in hashtag A and B, it's possible that the palette is resetting the default color to the
Yeah.
start color.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's the case. So
That makes sense.
yeah, that does make sense. So if I look at my time series, I've got definitely two different values, two different sets of values here. So that helps. Or by the way, if I go to chart and if I go back to this, and if I go to here, I should be able to grab table and I should be able to see my tables, right? And that's what it is. I think some of them don't have values. So that's why things are getting a little wonky here. Some have values. That's right, because I won't see the previous day for my time shift. Okay, got it. The point is
bar
that
graph
it,
seems to work quite well to show it, John. If you
I'm
changed
sorry?
it, if you change it to the bar graph,
Yeah.
for the chart type, that seems to show it quite well.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah, you're right. It does. Excellent. Okay, good. All right. So the point is that again, we're trying to get an idea of how our performance is doing compared to a day ago. And that's basically what we're doing. Now, again, we have in our app catalog, we have a AWS ELB metric. So if I type in AWS, ALB, Advanced Load Balancer, I have a dashboard here that I can install that's going to provide me all kinds of good information about my application load balancer, right? And that's what we're trying to show you is we've got Elastic Load Balancer applications, your application load balancer information, all kinds of stuff that you could install on this and see that information, okay? I'm not going to worry about installing it just in the interest of time. So I'm just going to skip away from that. But we want to, again, show you that you've got a bunch of applications here that you can install. ALB, ELB, all kinds of different stuff, depending on what you're looking at. All right, I'm not sure why here's my Elastic Load. Oh, I see. That's why they didn't spell ELB. They said Elastic Load Balancer. Okay, gotcha. A lot of different applications here that you can install with lots of different dashboards and stuff. Okay. Now, moving on to Lab 8. We would love to be able to get metrics from logs, right? We ingest logs. Why don't we convert some of those into metrics? The way that we do that is open up our Sumo Logic training environment. Under Manage Data, there is a tab here for metrics. And in here, we have a section for metric rules. Now, we have the ability to convert from one metric type to another. There are 3 different formats that we support inside of Sumo Logic. There is Carbon 2.0, there is Graphite, and there is Prometheus. So let me go back to my slides for a second, and let's talk about those different formats. Okay. Again, we like the key value pair, right? The key value pair you see in Carbon 2.0. So Carbon 2.0, we use without any modifications, any problems, whatever. Prometheus, what it does is it takes these various components and it puts them inside of curly braces. So we can convert from Prometheus to Carbon 2.0. We can also convert to a Graphite, which is a dot noted notation, into Carbon 2.0. And the way that we do that is, this is an FYI, is we have these metric rules. And so if I, for example, go into this Graphite tool, you'll see that we have an environment here where we have travel dot. Well, the first dot here is the namespace. So whatever my travel dot my namespace is, dot, my second node is my node, then my pod, then my type, then my metric. And what this is going to do is this is going to convert that dotted notation to Carbon 2.0, key value pairs. It's going to split these things out and make key value pairs out of them. That's basically what my metric rules do. Now, there are some functions that when you do these metric rules that you cannot use. And that's in our documentation. In fact, I've taken the liberty in my documentation, in my bookmarks, and I have actually bookmarked them under tidbits. So the point is that you're going to get a test question or two on here that says when you're doing metric rules, what can't you convert and things like that. So that's the reason I'm going there. You can do a simple log search on it and find it. So that's how we can convert different formats. Now, also, we can also do logs to metrics. So here, as we ingest logs, we can convert those logs. So for example, I'm opening this one right up, right? So here I'm going to grab some Apache logs, right? And in my Apache logs, I'm going to do a parse regex or a parse JSON or a parse whatever I need to do to extract out the fields. And when I look at these, and I see somebody raise their hand, so give me a second. I've extracted out the method, the refer, the size, the source IP, the status code, the URL, and the user agent. Now, of these various fields, get is going to be it's not going to be a metric, right? It's text. Refer is text. Size is numeric. It could be a metric. Source IP, because it has decimal points in it, is automatically viewed as text, so I don't have to worry about that. Status code is numeric, and it could be a metric. The question is, do I want to aggregate my status codes? Do I want to sum them, min them, max them? Probably not. Do I want to sum or min or max my size? Yes, I do. So the point is that we can go down here, and as far as status code and size, these are only two numeric fields that we have. I've got to tell it to treat them either as a metric so that they can be aggregated and all that fun stuff, or treat it as a dimension, which means I'm not going to aggregate it. I'm not going to sum it or min it or max it or things like that. So any numeric fields that I extract from here, I've got to specify whether to treat them as metrics or dimensions. And so if I do this, it's now going to ingest those logs, and it's automatically going to create my metrics for me. And so in lab number 8, what we're trying to show you is how that process happens, and you can create that process. And then you can then test that process. So for example, here, I take this code, and I think I grabbed it all. Hold on a second, folks. There we go. And again, I need to be in advanced mode for this. And if I run this, I should get my data. There it is, metric from logs. Again, lots of different sources here. You can see it as a chart. Okay. And so I'm seeing all this, the count of my status codes here, right? And I'm sorry, seeing the size value, the size value here of my status code of just 200s. I want to see my status codes in maybe 403s. I could change this to 403s and see what my size of that is. Okay. So we're just trying to show you how you can ingest log data and create metrics at the same time. Okay. Now let's talk about alerts. And by the way, before I do that, I know somebody had a question. So what questions do you have before I get into the alerts? Okay. Alerts is something that we've worked very hard to improve because our alerts initially weren't that great. I'm going to close all tabs here. To do your alerts, what you want to do is you want to go into manage data and you want to go in here to monitor. And so you and I can create a monitor. Now this monitor can be based on log data or metric data. It doesn't make any difference. So first of all, I can add a folder to put all of my specific monitors for a specific environment in that folder. I can organize things, right? So you can create a container for it. And then once you get your container created, you can go in that container and you can create a new monitor. So here, what do you want to monitor? Do you want to monitor logs or metrics? And then what do you want to get? So for example, here, I'm going to create a simple query, source category equals my computer. And I'm going to look at a specific metric equals, right? I'll take CPU sys. All right. And so I'm going to write a query here that shows me, here is my CPU sys. Now, in reality, my CPU is running fairly low here. It's less than 5%. So it's not a big deal. You might notice there's two different colors here. That's because this morning I was running this before class and then I deleted my collector. And this is now my new collector here that's going on. So that's why you're seeing the different colors. But the point is that here's my CPU sys. And normally if I was a server or something like that, I'd probably want to, first of all, alert me if I'm missing some data, right? So here's my query. Here's what I want to do when I'm missing data. And I want you to tell me if I'm missing data for, say, 5 minutes. Great. And by the way, if I get data back, I want you to notify me there as well. So we define the trigger types. And maybe I want to warn. Maybe I want to warn if my CPU gets maybe above, we'll say 3% here. Now, in reality, right? Actually, let me get 2%. In reality, obviously, I'd want to warn myself it gets like 90% or 85%, something like that, right? And I also want to be notified if it recovers. And then for my critical, I want to make my critical maybe 4%. Now, again, in reality, I probably want to notify me if I get to like 98% or 95% or something like that, right? But for the value of the data that I have right now, this will work. Now down here, I can, when I display my alert, I can have it use the monitor name, or I can customize this if I want to. And I can even use certain variables in here if I want to display. So I can customize my alert, and I can even postpone the evaluation delay for a 2-minute period of time in case I need to. Then the question is, how do you want to notify folks? Do you want to notify them by creating an email? Do you want to notify them by maybe going to send something to Datadog or Slack or Teams or whatever, a webhook to various systems? How do you want to notify them? I'll just create a new email. I'll send it to myself. Now, of course, you can send this to your network operations team, whatever you want to do. Again, this is my subject line by default. I can add other things in here if I want to. My message, I can specify whatever I want. Okay, put information in here. And then when do I want this to fire? When I'm missing data and I recover? Do I want this to fire when I'm critical and recover? Warning, recover? What do I want to do here? Now, interestingly enough, you can also specify a playbook. So in the playbook, you can specify that maybe I give you a link to a playbook or directions that say, here's the actions to recover. Okay, so I can give you a pick list there. Also in here, I could put a nice description in if I want to. Now, in the case of my monitor, I'm going to just type in here JWM. I'll type in today's date, just something to appease the goodness here. One thing I wish we did, since we're focusing on UI right now and user interface, this save button should be at the very end here, in my opinion. So as you're driving through this process, the last thing you want to do is click save, but it's up here at the top right now. So now what I've done is I have created a new monitor here. And there it is, JWM 719. Now, this particular monitor, like I said, right now my CPU utilization is probably low. I've not created an alert, things like that. Here I have created an alert, and I actually have an alert condition. If I go into this, and if I were to edit this, you'll see that I basically set it up so that if I'm above 0, create an alert. Now, where do you see these alerts? Where is this thing coming from? What's going on? Well, In your tab up here where the bell is, those are your alerts. And so here you can see any alerts that you have. You can go into those alerts. And in these alerts, you'll see that here's my condition, here's what's going on, here's when I'm hitting that alert, here's the alert condition. I can see a timeline, I can see my values. I can also, if I click on my playbook, I can see the information about my playbook, what steps to take, things like that. And again, I can look at my monitor history here as far as how many times this has happened. All kinds of interesting things just by creating that simple little alert. It's provided you all this information. And of course, I can view it in my metric query, my metric explorer. So alerts have become very, very popular and very, very powerful. I realize I'm cutting into your exam time here, so that's why I'm trying to go through this fairly quickly. Okay. Lab 10, lab cleanup, all you have to do to remove your collector from our training environment is to go in here to manage data in our training environment, go into collection, find your collector, and if you want to, you can click delete, and that deletes the collector and the source. Then the other thing you have to do is go into your computer and you have to uninstall the software. So one, if you delete the collector here, that's going to take care of that. But then you also need to uninstall the software. If you're on a Windows machine, right? If you're on a Windows machine, all you have to do is go into add remove programs, find the Sumo Logic collector, and install it. If you are on a Mac, then you're going to go into your Finder. And in your Finder, hang on a second. Oh, that's right. wrong browser tool here. Okay. Let's go into my Finder. Again, under applications, come on, wiki. Okay, under applications here, you should see a folder called Sumo Logic Collector. Here is the uninstaller app, and you can run that app and uninstall it, and life will be fine. So that's how you clean up from this. That's lab 10. So what questions have you before I start getting you ready to take the exam?
How do you uninstall it from Windows? It's telling me I don't have rights.
Yep. Okay. You should be able to go into your Windows control panel, choose to uninstall a program, and uninstall that, the Windows Sumo Logic Collector. And in my mind, if you installed it, you should be able to uninstall it. I'm also pretty sure that if you look in your Windows folder somewhere, you'll have a Sumo Logic Collector folder, and then there will be an uninstalled program that you can use as well. But if that doesn't work, if there's problems, I suggest you reach out to our support folks. You should be, if you installed it, you should be able to uninstall it.
Yeah, it's not, it's giving me an error.
Okay. I would talk to our support folks. See if there's an easy way to uninstall it. I'm sure somewhere in that your Windows environment, there's a folder and there's an uninstaller in there that you should be able to uninstall, but I'm not sure why it's, this is not Hotel California. You should be able to check in and check out. Okay. Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen? All right, let's talk about the exam. In order for you to take the exam, we want you to take the exam under your name. Why do I mention that? Well, right now, you all are logged in as training plus admin with some crazy number. So what I want you to do is I want you to log out. And the way you log out, if your navigation panel is not open it up. Down here in the lower left-hand corner, you'll see your account, training, whatever. And if you click on it, it brings up a menu here. And then if you click sign out, that's going to sign you out. Now I want you to go to your company's Sumo Logic environment, and I want you to log into your company's Sumo Logic environment. So you're logged in with your email address, your normal first name, last name, and all that good stuff. So let me give you a minute to do that. Log out of our training environment, log into your company's Sumo Logic environment. So you're logged in. Down here, it says your first name and your last name, right?
What if we don't have a Sumo Logic environment?
Okay. Hang on a second. If you don't have a Sumo Logic environment, you can request a demo environment. So if you go to this URL, which I'll put in the chat box, go to that URL in the chat box, you should be able to sign up for a free demo environment. Okay. And then you can use that environment to take your test.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for asking. So I hope everybody's logged into their company's Sumo Logic environment. And if you are, if you click on the Home tab, you click on the Certification tab underneath that Home tab, and you click on Get Certified. Now, it may ask you to verify or we want your permissions or whatever. In which case, if you click on that Allow button or whatever, it should send you an email. You click on that email, and then you're able to access this. So it's just what we're trying to do is we want your permission before we move you from your Sumo Logic environment to our learning management system, or to any other system as far as Sumo is concerned. We want your blessing. That's what that's all about. So when you click on that Get Certified button, if it says we need to verify your email address, go ahead and click on that. And you'll get an email very shortly with, in the body of that email has a button. You click on that button, and then this problem is fixed. It will never happen again. Go back to that Get Certified button, click on it, it will take you here, period. Now, as far as the certifications, when you log in with your name, you should see all of these now. All of these now. And what you want to do is click on the Get Certified. That's where our certification exams are. And you want to find the Metric Mastery exam. And there should be a registration button that you can click on, and poof, you're instantly registered. And then if you don't mind, let me walk you through this real quick. Before I walk you through this, let me do this. On the upper right-hand corner is your profile. So up here in the upper right-hand corner is your profile. In your profile, it has your information, and it also keeps track of all the exams that you've taken and passed. If you've passed it, you can view the certificate here. You can also add that certification to your LinkedIn profile by clicking this little button. Okay, and it will add your certification into your certification area. Okay. Now, the reason I mention that, let me click done here to get out of this. So here I am back in the exam. You'll find that when we take the exam, we finish it up and it's graded. There's going to be a little button there at the end. And if you don't click on that button, it's not going to add it to your profile, which means the exam did not happen. So please, when you finish up the exam, there's a little button that says submit or done or whatever, click on it. So it adds it to your profile. Okay. Now, before you start, if you click on this, it says you got 30 questions, you got 60 minutes to complete it. And the passing rate is 75%. When you start the exam, you'll have 60 minutes. That's absolutely true. Exams are multiple guess, fill in the blank, drag and drop, so forth and so on. Open book exam. I will be here in case you've got any questions. So you're welcome to ask me a question if you get stuck on something. Then when you're ready, I'm going to go ahead and click next. I don't want you to click next yet, but here is the exam. As I start to scroll down, so I got a timer up here for 1 hour. If I scroll down, start seeing questions, my timer starts. Okay. And so it says here, you've installed the Host Metric app, which dashboard is not automatically installed. I believe I mentioned this. Does not have the IP, right? So I'm going to answer a question or two here as I go through this. Why does Sumo Logic support AWS CloudWalk sources and other AWS and not other AWS metric sources? It's because these are support metrics that are admitted at a regular interval. Okay. So, and then I can go through the rest of these questions. Some of them you're going to have to look up. Some of them you're going to have a good time with. But when I'm done with this, I'm going to submit my answers. Now, obviously, I only answered 2 questions, so I'm sure I didn't pass. But when I click submit here, this close course button is that button I told you about. When you pass this and you see your score and you're above 75, don't forget to click this close course button so it adds it to your profile. Okay. But here I can also see what questions I got right, what questions I got wrong. I don't know why I got them wrong, but I can see what questions I got wrong. So that's how you can get some feedback on your questions. But don't forget to click this. And most importantly here, don't forget to submit the Uber Eats voucher form. By the way, for those of you who are going to be with us tomorrow or Thursday for the classes there, you can also combine your certifications on the same form. So I will be teaching the morning sessions of those classes as well. So by the time Thursday rolls around, you're going to get very sick and tired of seeing me. Okay. But there is the form information in case you want. By the way, there's a part in that form we want you to send a copy of your certificate. If you can't upload that, don't worry about it. Just submit the form without uploading anything, and we'll take care of it from there. But that's how you get to the exam. Any questions, ladies and gentlemen? All right, then let me sign off here. Let me put my camera back on for a moment. And again, I want to thank you all for attending. Appreciate your hard work and efforts. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out and ask me. Otherwise, I'll be here while you're taking the exam, although I am going to step away for a few minutes to walk my dog. I'll let you know when that happens. But otherwise, please have a great day. Please be safe, and hopefully we'll see you in class again real soon. Just a friendly reminder, tomorrow at the same time, we're doing an applications observability fundamentals class. And then on Thursday, we are running our Kubernetes class. Same time. So hope to see you there. Otherwise, have a great day, guys. And like I said, I'll be hanging around while you're in the labs. Any questions?
Hey, John, I have a quick
Yep.
question.
Yes, sir.
The second I hit next on the certification page, it instantly just failed me and gave me 0%. Is
Okay.
that like normal? Like, can we retake the test, I guess?
Yeah, you
is the
retake
question?
stuff. If you accidentally,
perfect.
yeah, if you pull the trigger too early and didn't, yeah. If you followed along with me, yeah, just do it. Go and take it again. Esteban asked a really good question. Does this form apply to countries outside the US? Anywhere that you've got Uber Eats, it applies. So if you have Uber Eats, that's great. I will tell you that if any of you are from India, we had a heck of a fun time trying to get Ziggy. We had a relationship with Ziggy to do the similar type of vouchers, and they weren't giving out the right amount, and they weren't doing a lot of other things. We gave that up. So it was just too hard and too complicated and too many other issues there. So, but yes, as long as you've got a country that accepts Uber Eats, or if you want to just give it to a friend or family that's got an Uber Eats available to them, whatever you want to do. So it's available in any country. Yep. Thank you. Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen? All right. Again, thank you. Let me stop the recording.